You wake up. For 1 second, you're still in it, running down a hallway that doesn't exist, talking to someone who died years ago, or just somewhere, doing something, feeling something you can't quite name. There's a texture to it, a mood, maybe even a whole conversation you were in the middle of. The light in the room hasn't registered yet. Your body hasn't caught up to the fact that it's Tuesday, that you have a job, that none of it happened. For that 1 second, the dream is still more real than the ceiling above you, more real than the alarm still buzzing somewhere near your head. Then you reach for your phone. By the time your thumb hits the screen, the whole thing is gone. Not faded, gone. You can feel the shape of it like a word stuck on the tip of your tongue, but the content itself has already evaporated. You know there was a hallway. You know someone was talking. You have no idea what either of them looked like anymore. Most dreams disappear within minutes of waking up, not because they weren't real to you while they were happening, but because your brain is built, on purpose, to erase them. And the reason it does that says something uncomfortable about how much of your own mind you don't actually control. Dream recall starts falling apart almost immediately. Researchers at the University of Bologna studied people right, as they woke from REM sleep and found recall dropped off, sharply within the first few minutes, if the person didn't rehearse the dream or write it down right away. Some participants lost the entire dream in under 60 seconds. 60 seconds. That's the window between having a fully rendered experience. Sound, motion, emotion, a whole cast of people your brain invented on the spot, and having nothing at all. You didn't lose the memory over the course of the day. You lost it before you even got out of bed. But here's where it gets interesting. The forgetting isn't a bug. It's chemistry. During REM sleep, your brain runs on almost no norepinephrine, a chemical closely tied to attention and memory encoding while you're awake and alert. Drop that chemical out of the system, and the parts of the brain responsible for laying down new long-term memories are, for all practical purposes, offline. Neuroscientist Francesca Siclari's research on sleep and consciousness points to this as one reason dream content barely gets written to long-term memory in the first place. The recording device is essentially switched off while the movie is playing in full color right in front of it. You're not forgetting the dream. It was barely stored to begin with. There was almost nothing to lose. But here's where it gets interesting. Not everyone forgets equally, and the gap between people is bigger than you'd expect. A study out of the Lyon Neuroscience Research Center, led by Perrine Ruby, found that people who reliably recall their dreams tend to have more nighttime awakenings. Brief, seconds-long returns to consciousness that most people don't even notice happening in the moment, let alone remember afterward. In Ruby's research, high recallers showed roughly twice the brain activity in the temporoparietal junction when hearing their own name during sleep, a region tied to directing attention toward things happening outside the mind. It's the same circuitry that would, in theory, notice a smoke alarm or a crying baby faster. A nervous system permanently set a notch more alert, even at 3 a.m. Forgetting your dreams might not mean you dream less. It might just mean you sleep more soundly than the person lying next to you, who wakes up with a full story to tell. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a theory that forgetting is functional, not accidental. That your brain isn't failing to save the dream, it's choosing to discard it. A study published in Science, led by Celia Kerby and colleagues, proposed that specific neurons active during REM sleep may actively suppress memory formation, while the dreaming itself is happening. The leading idea is that dreaming helps process emotional material and consolidate memories from the day before. But the raw footage, the surreal plot, the impossible hallway, the person who shouldn't be there, is disposable once that processing is finished. Your brain finishes the edit, then deletes the source file without asking you first. But here's where it gets interesting. The exact moment you wake up matters more than almost anything else in this whole process. Sleep researcher Robert Stickgold has pointed out that memories formed in one brain state don't transfer cleanly into another. Waking is a full-state change, and dream content, built entirely inside a sleeping brain running on different chemistry, doesn't reliably survive the crossing unless something anchors it fast. That's the actual mechanism behind an old piece of advice you've probably heard before. People who keep a notebook by the bed and write the moment they wake report remembering dramatically more over weeks and months. Not because they're suddenly dreaming more than they used to, because they're catching the memory in the handful of seconds before the door closes for good. You're not bad at remembering dreams. You're just always a few seconds too slow, every single night, without exception, whether you notice it or not. But here's where it gets interesting. Age changes this too, and not in the direction most people assume. Dream recall tends to peak in adolescence and young adulthood, and then gradually decline across the decades, which researchers have linked partly to changes in sleep architecture. Older adults spend less time in the lighter, more fragmented stages of sleep where those brief micro-awakenings are more likely to happen. Children, meanwhile, often struggle to even describe dreams coherently before a certain age, not because they aren't dreaming, but because the narrative machinery needed to package a dream into a tellable story is still under construction. Somewhere in the middle of life, your brain sits at its best both at generating dreams and at briefly touching them before they slip away again. But here's where it gets interesting. Alcohol, stress, and even the temperature of your bedroom all quietly shift how much you remember, and most of it comes down to the same mechanism. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep early in the night and then produces a rebound of extra vivid REM later, which is part of why a rough night's drinking can leave you with unusually intense, unusually memorable dreams the next morning. Stress and anxiety fragment sleep in a similar way to natural high recall traits, generating more of those brief awakenings that give a dream a chance to imprint before it's lost. None of these factors change how much you're dreaming. They change how many times, across the night, your brain accidentally opens the door on itself. But here's where it gets interesting. Even the act of trying to remember can rewrite what you're remembering. Sleep and memory researchers have long noted that dream reports, when recorded minutes apart from the same person, often shift in small but real ways. A detail added, a sequence reordered, a face that becomes more familiar with each retelling than it was in the actual dream. This tracks with how ordinary memory works more broadly. Every time you pull a memory out to look at it, you're not replaying a fixed recording. You're reconstructing it from fragments. And the reconstruction can drift from the original a little more each time, which means the dream you remember at breakfast, after telling it to someone across the table, may already be a slightly different dream than the one you actually had at 6 a.m. You're not just forgetting the original. You're quietly editing whatever's left of it. Every time you take it back out, that true first dream, the one that existed for half a second before you opened your eyes, may be genuinely unrecoverable, not stored badly, but never fully stored at all. There's a wrinkle in all this, though, and it complicates the tidy version of the story. Some people remember dreams so vividly, so often, that it stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling intrusive. Nightmares replayed in exhausting detail for years afterward, or dream content that bleeds into daytime mood and makes ordinary mornings feel heavier than they should. Heavy dream recall has been studied in connection with certain anxiety and sleep disorders, where the same lighter, more easily interrupted sleep that helps recall also quietly disrupts rest itself. For people who deal with this, sleep researchers have noted that the goal of treatment is often the opposite of what you'd expect. Not to sharpen recall, but to help the brain get back to the ordinary business of forgetting, which reframes the whole question. The forgetting most of us do effortlessly, without even trying, without ever once deciding to, might actually be a kind of nightly mercy, a reset switch that keeps yesterday's strange, chaotic footage from crowding out today and today's from crowding out tomorrow. A mind that remembered every dream in full would be dragging an ever-growing second life behind it, one with its own cast of characters, its own unresolved plots, its own weight. Forgetting is what keeps the two lives, the waking one and the dreaming one, from bleeding into each other completely. Maybe the erasing isn't the failure. Maybe, all along, It's been the feature. The quiet maintenance work that makes it possible to wake up new every single day instead of slightly more haunted than the day before. You're back in bed now, phone in hand, and it's already gone. The hallway, the person, the feeling you can't name anymore, no matter how hard you chase it down. For a moment, you try to hold on to it anyway, the way you always do, squeezing at something that's already turned to smoke. Then you give up, the way you always do, and get on with your day.